You are listening to the Be the Bridge podcast with Latasha Morrison.
How you guys doing today? It's exciting.
Each week, Be the Bridge podcast tackles subjects related to race and culture with the goal of bringing understanding.
But I'm going to do it in the spirit of love.
We believe understanding can move us toward racial healing, racial equity, and racial unity. Latasha Morrison is the founder of Be the Bridge, which is an organization responding to racial brokenness and systemic injustice in our world. This podcast is an extension of our vision to make sure people are no longer conditioned by a racialized society, but grounded in truth. If you have not hit the subscribe button, please do so now. Without further ado, let's begin today's podcast. Oh, and stick around for some important information at the end.
Okay, Be the Bridge community. I've been looking forward to this all week. It has been a tough, let me tell you, it's been a tough, I want to say week, but I want to say year. But really the last few days have been tough, and I was looking forward to this conversation with my sister. She just told me, she said, you done had everybody on here. Now it's not my turn. And so I have Ekemini Uwan, Sister Theology. She is a public theologian, and she's going to explain that to us, who received her MDiv from Westminster Theological Seminary. Uwan is a contributing writer for Hallmark Mahogany. Listen, I just saw that. I am so impressed. She is a member of the Aspen Institute's Racial Justice and Religion Commission. She has appeared on MSNBC, NPR, and her writings have been published in The Atlantic, Washington Post, Huffington Black Voices, and her insights have been quoted by the New York Times, CNN, the Washington Post, and New Yorker. And I just want to add this. She's a woman of God, and I just love her. And I am so grateful to have her here on the podcast this week, during this time in this season. Welcome, Ekemini. I am so glad.
Tasha, I'm honored to be here. So grateful to be here for such a time as this. Grateful to be with you, my sister.
Yeah, and I just love you. Like, I feel like we've met in person maybe right before the pandemic here in Atlanta.
That's right.
And that was the first time, but I felt like we knew each other because we had talked so much and texted and all the things. And just, we all try to support each other. Those of us that are in these public spaces, so I know some of you may not understand, but, you know, we try to make sure that we're just looking out for one another. And you always looking out for me, and I try to my best to look out for you. And I'm just grateful for you. I'm grateful for your voice. I'm grateful for your gifting. The world is better. The church is better because you are alive. And so I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you, sis. You're going to make me cry already.
And I get to talk about that. First of all, this pretty book. Oh. It's just like the words in it are pretty, but the book is just pretty. Like, it's, if y'all haven't seen the cover, it's like, you know, back in the day, you don't want to cut this one up. You need to get an extra one.
That's right.
And cut it up, and then you want to hang it on your wall. It's so pretty.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad you love the book and the contents in the cover. Okay.
Yes. I love it. I love all of it.
Put so much thought into it.
Yeah, and I just said we would be remiss if we didn't. I love the first in the introduction how if you listen to the Truth Tables podcast, they always start off with, "Hey y'all, welcome to Truth Table," and it's just that like that church music in the background, and they say we're the midwives of culture for grace and truth.
That's right.
We are Ekemini, Michelle, and Christina, and this table is built by Black women and for Black women. So welcome to the table, sisters. And then y'all always say how y'all doing. And I love how you guys are like unapologetic about that. So I want to talk a little bit about that before because this is the book is Truth's Table. So I want to know what inspired that. Why did you start the podcast?
Yeah. So, well.
I know, right? I just went in.
Well, I mean, so the podcast originally started in 2017, March 2017, but we went into pre-production in the fall. Actually, the last quarter of 2016, which, if you all recollect, that was during the presidential election between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump.
Oh, okay.
And so we decided that it was very, very important for us because we knew the way it was going, and we were like, if this goes the way we're thinking it's going to go, people are going to be having some very traumatic racial experiences and traumatizing, even I would say gender violence. There's all types of triggering responses to this election. And so we wanted to be able to stand in the gap and be the midwives of culture for grace and truth, holding the hands of our sisters as we traverse, through that very difficult time. Well, it's still hard, but that difficult season we were entering into. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so that's why we were like, we need to start something. And we were like, we just didn't see any other podcasts out there that tackled race, gender, culture, and politics from a robust Christian theological lens, at least. And if they did it wasn't Black women that were doing it. And so until this day, I don't know other podcasts that still do that. And so that's how Truth Table came to be, and it was birthed in March 2017 during Women's History Month. So that was also very intentional. We're very intentional at Truth Table.
Right. Well, thank God, because it was needed, and it's still needed. And I know it's been a blessing to so many people. And I love the fact that, you're really unapologetic of who it's for. Like, anyone can listen, but this is who it's for.
That's right.
And so, I mean, I want to, how has that been received? Because, when, I know the world that we live in, this racialized society, and when you say that, even with your intentions, because people don't understand why we have to lift up our community and our people, sometimes they feel like the lifting up of Black women means that you're putting down white women. And that's just a racist ideology because you're not understanding the history and the context. So, what has the reception been like with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've gone through many different iterations with responses to that. Truth Table, we do believe in the importance of declaring ourselves and saying, very explicitly, this table is built by Black women and for Black women. Even with the book, Truth Table, Black Women's Musings on Life, Love, and Liberation. These are Black women's musings. These are not our answers to life. Love. This is not what thus saith the Lord. These are our musings, what we've gathered through our lived experience. And so people, there's been a variety of different responses to it. I think the good thing about declaring yourself and being explicit about who the show is for, who you have in mind when you're writing, is that it does implicitly, I would say, teach people outside of that demographic, so non-Black women, which would include, and outside of that will be Black men as well. It teaches them to learn how to listen and learn from people who have a different social location than you, that have a different experience from you, to learn from people that are probably more marginalized than you, depending on where you fall in this racialized society and in this system, right? And so, there were some people that were just completely offended, I'm sure, in the very beginning, right? Because Truth Table has been around for 5+ years now, and we're on our 6th season, the podcast. So, we're not new to this at this point, So initially there was some oh my goodness, but it's just because we're centering Black women doesn't mean you can't learn. In fact, you can learn a whole lot from a group that is deeply oppressed in this land about what it means to not only be resilient, but to overcome, to persevere, to bask in joy, in Black joy, but you get a whole host of that on the show, and you'll get that in the book too, of course.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the space is so needed. And so so you guys had a successful podcast. I mean, like you said, there was nothing out there in the Christian space like this. Yeah. And then the different personalities, I think you complement each other so well. And your relationship, even outside of the podcast, like it just really exudes, I think, what it means to be a Black woman in this world, and friendships, too. That's right. And I think I love the beauty of that. Like you guys are all very different, and you have your distinctive voices, your convictions, and it just works really well. And I think it's something for us to see, because for me, like, just seeing Black girls, I'm not like, trying to, knock anyone's hustle, but just seeing us at each other on reality TV and just on, TV. I hate that whole, that divide, because we don't need that. We get enough of that from the world and from the white spaces that we're in, that, the spaces that we create for ourselves can't be about competition. It can't be about, your voice needs to sound like my voice, or just all this competition, just all this like mess. And I love that, and I'm pretty sure that you have your disagreements, because we are human. But I love what it displayed. It really it came at the right time. Because I don't like the messiness. I'm probably one of the few Black girls. I don't like the messiness of reality TV. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I'm telling everybody, no, I don't like it. I know.
Look at me, I'm like, I wish I could say I was one of them. I was like, I do be liking my reality shows, but I hear your words.
I know that's what some people say. I like the drama because it takes the focus off of my drama. But I wanted to know, that's what people say. But I wanted to know why the book. Like you had the podcast. Why did you decide to write the book?
Yeah, so I'm so glad you asked that. And, what's interesting is that what you're echoing back to me about our friendship, the camaraderie at the table, the sisterhood at the table, are the diversity within the unity. If you will, even with our various social locations, different positions, right? Even theological positions or political positions. You get those varieties, right? Or you get that variety, from the show, and you can tell our different, like, just views, and stances in the show, and it is pretty complementary. We complement each other pretty well, and I think that's something that people have been saying back to us about our book, Truth Table, Black Women's Musings on Life, Love, and Liberation, is how did y'all get this book, the three of y'all, how did y'all get right in such harmony? And honestly, I think it's just a work of the Spirit, which is the same way that the book really came about. I had spoken at a conference many years ago. Some may know or may not know. This was a conference back in 2019, and there was a lot of controversy over what was said, what I said at that time. And an editor reached out to me from Penguin Random House, asking me if I had, any thoughts about a book. And so, I was like, I have been kicking around this idea for my own solo book, but it's still germinating, not ready yet. To really write on it, but I will get there, right? And so, and then she was okay. Well, what about, because this person loves Truth Table, and she's like, what about a book for Truth Table? And I was like, okay, and other publishers had reached out about it, but truthfully, the advance money, they just couldn't afford, to give us the right advance in order to make it make sense, for the three of us to be able to, sit down and do what you need to do in order to write a book. You got to decline a lot of opportunities in order to say yes to writing. Right?
That is so true.
You know this, Tasha. So you know it better than me. Okay, so you're writing right now, and so I took it, back to Michelle and Christina, like, hey, what do y'all think about this? And they thought about it and prayed about it. And in the midst of doing that, the pandemic, coronavirus hits our shores, and things are now shutting down. The world shut down. I would say during season 1 of the pandemic, because it's still going on. And so we couldn't get on planes and fly and talk and speak and do what we were accustomed to doing, right? Jet setting everywhere to go and speak. And so we decided, you know what, this would be probably, the right time for us to go ahead and secure that book opportunity and take this time to write. Yeah. Now, of course, we didn't know we were going to be as burnt out and, still running on this rat race, in the midst of the pandemic. We didn't know. We thought we were going to have more time and, we would have more time to ourselves and time to think. And that's not quite what happened, but that's all right. So we got the deal signed in summer 2020 and started writing toward the end of 2020, early first quarter of 2021. And now the book is here. Of course, it's in stores everywhere now.
Yeah. And I mean, the time frame of that, because I remember us having the conversation back in 2019 about you possibly doing a solo project. You remember that?
Yes. Oh, my goodness. Yes, Tasha.
And I remember that. And we were talking about agents and all of those things.
Oh, my goodness. You were so helpful.
Like that. And so I am grateful now that this came out first, and there's going to be more to come. I'm speaking this we know that there's more to come. Amen. But I think to start out with this one, A Black Woman's Musings on Life, Love, and Liberation. That's right. There's so much to being a Black woman, and sometimes I think there's this binary. Just this very small myopic view of who we are. But I think you guys represent so much of who we are as Black women in your diversity. You know what I'm saying? Within that. And so when there's some chapters, oh my God, there's some chapters that you wrote. And what were your main chapters that you wrote? And we're going to talk about a few of those. And I also want to talk even, I know you can't speak to Christina's or, or Michelle's, but we'll just give people a little taste of what those are about too. Which chapters did you write?
Yeah, so one of the actual first chapter I wrote, and it starts the book, is The Audacious Perseverance of Colorism. Then the next one. So actually, let me say it this way. So the book is Truth Table: Black Women's Musings on Life, Love, and Liberation, right? And so those subtitles, the Life, Love, and Liberation, is how the book is organized and divided, right? And so you go to Life first, and you will see we begin with The Audacious Perseverance of Colorism. Yes. And then within that same section of Life, I also wrote Decolonized Discipleship. And then in there is also Michelle's chapter about protest as spiritual practice, so that talks about her own origin story, actually, and also her experience as an organizer during the movement in Ferguson. After Michael Brown was killed by the police there So that's Life. And then in Love, I wrote Hidden in Plain Sight, a single Black woman's manifesto.
First of all, that right there, that's a whole book by itself right there.
Listen,
we're gonna park there for a minute, a little bit.
Tasha, it is. Because listen, it turned into a manifesto because I started writing it as a chapter. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is really turning into a manifesto, and it's the longest chapter in the book. Okay? So
there's so much to say. There's so much to say. Oh my goodness.
So much to say. Such little page room. And so and then the last section, Liberation, I have a chapter in there called Diaspora Dreams, Blackness as the Image of God.
Yeah. And it's so funny, it's right here in the notes of which ones, but even if it was a test and you gave me this book and you said, okay, which ones did Michelle write, which ones did Christina write, and which ones did Ekemini, I would know exactly. I would get them all right.
That's so funny. I love it.
I would get them all right.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, I'm just okay. Let's go back to the first one, The Audacious Perseverance of Colorism. In you can give people, a brief overview of what this chapter is about, but I want to talk about like how this looks in 2022,
Absolutely.
So give us and I know you've talked about it on your show. You tweet about it and all of those things, and I know this is something that even for us, it's a conversation we need to have in our community. But also I think it's something that that other communities can learn from, because although it's prevalent in the African American Black community, it's also in the Hispanic community, the Latinx community.
Yes,
I don't know. Sometimes I don't know which one, because I know some people don't like Latinx, some people don't like Latinx.
I know.
I don't know what to say. But
I've been hearing Latine is how.
Yeah.
So I've been saying that. So I'd actually say that in the book, but I don't know. It does change quite a bit. But so I tried to say, okay, I think Latine is what people are preferring, but I don't know. That's what I put in the book, but I know it could change. So
so Latine, and then also the Asian American community. I mean, and I know your perspective, even being from Nigeria, this looks different than what it looks like in America too. So I would just love to hear your writings and some of the things you talked about in there. The audacious perseverance of colorism is, that chapter, I thought it was important for me to title it that way, because it does continue to persevere, right? Because I was trying to make it clear that 2022, this thing is still here. And it's still showing up, and it's showing up like this, like this, like this, like this. And this is how it's impacting me and many other, Black women like me, dark-skinned Black women like me. And so I think that, and I write in that chapter that you cannot be anti-racist and be a colorist. Like, you have to be anti-racist and anti-colorist. You got to understand the relationship between racism and colorism. You know what I mean? And knowing that it is racism and white supremacy that is the foreground. That it's the roots. That's the roots of colorism. And so, although this is an intraracial dynamic primarily, you do see colorism practice even outside of our community, right? By decision makers and power brokers. And so I think so let me say this. So colorism, just in case your listeners don't know what it is or not familiar with it, obviously I believe y'all will pick up the book and you can read the definition there. Right. This is just my quick, summary, but it is, colorism is when dark-skinned people within, an ethnic group are discriminated against because they are darker. And so they are discriminated against in ways that are detrimental. So with regard to even our interaction with, say, the criminal justice system, with regards to job opportunities, promotions, this impacts our marriage market. So our ability to have as many plentiful options with regard to dating and then marriage. And so there's stats and data contained within this book, and particularly that chapter that talks about how the ways that actually light-skinned women, have higher rates of marriage than dark-skinned women, and then how they receive higher pay than dark-skinned women, and they receive easier or lighter sentences than dark-skinned women. And so it's very punitive. Colorism is on a systemic level, but also on a personal level as well. And so for me, that was really, really important to be able to elucidate that through stats, through data, but also through my own personal story about how colorism has impacted me. And what it meant to be a dark-skinned Black girl born and raised in California, which is deeply colorist. And so and there's different levels to this type of the colorism experience that your colorism experience, depending on where you were raised or where where you live, not to say colorism is everywhere. It's a global phenomenon, which is why it's not just connected to just our own Black and African communities. No, it's definitely global. Like you listed out, non-Black racial groups and people of color also have colorism and within their own communities. And so it was important for me to lay that out, and then also lay out the ways that even white people perpetuate
colorism, right? Because still, they are the ones that are making decisions on hiring decisions, right? Who are making the decisions about legal sentences, right? When we interact with the criminal justice system, and so there are still that mechanism of oppression is still functioning, sadly, alive and well today in 2022.
And explain too, because in the book you write, colorism is a offspring of white supremacy. And I think some people don't understand like how you're promoting, even as a Black person, you're promoting the ideologies of white supremacy when you subscribe to colorism.
Yeah. So, because, first of all, we know that white supremacy and whiteness is made up. It is a myth, fundamentally, that was meant, to stratify, right? And so to put, of course, Black, on the bottom, right? And white on top as superior, which is a myth. It's false, right? And then as I put Black on the bottom, I'm also going to name our native neighbors and siblings too, who have suffered, from genocide, which is why we don't oftentimes they are forgotten because they have been disappeared. But we thank God for those that are still here, right? So I think that's important for me, to say that. But yeah, so when I talk about how colorism is an offspring, of white supremacy, well, there are advantages conferred to people who are of lighter skin tone, right? Because on the color spectrum, right, light is closer to white. It is not white. And I do talk about in the book how, how we have, this is not about light skin versus dark skin beef. That's not what's happening in this chapter, and I go into the history, even going into slavery about, what it meant for an enslaved person that worked in the home versus what happened for an enslaved person that was in the field, and just talking about the danger and the risk of both. And so that we are not, trying to act as if they had it made in shade, sipping on lemonade. That was not the case.
That was not the case.
That is wrong. That is evil. And that is also a myth of white supremacy meant to cause a chasm between us. And so that was important for me to lay that out and to say that. But because they are closer on the color spectrum, the darker you get, the further away, right? You are from whiteness, quote unquote. The lighter you are, the closer you are. And so you gain benefits, whether you're still, as a light-skinned Black person, you're still experiencing racism. You're still experiencing misogyny. You're still experiencing all of those things. It doesn't mean like you are Black, no doubt about it. But there are privileges that are conferred to you that you may not even know about. Or you might be aware of, right? And oftentimes our first interaction with colorism is actually within our own family systems, actually. Because we just notice the variety of skin tones. Every Black family we have a variety of skin tones in our family.
People will check the ears of a baby or check the cuticles of a baby to see if... what color the baby will be. What color?
Eventually.
Yeah. And I mean it's prevalent in my family today.
This is a global thing.
Today.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that was the issue. I don't think people realize how even in our systems, our systems, even in our our anti-racism systems, like you think about the NAACP, that was one of the things that Marcus Garvey, was upset about, with W.E.B. Du Bois, they were saying all light-skinned people were working, at the NAACP. And I think it wasn't until you see Martin Luther King come on the scene that you start seeing more darker skinned people being advocates and voices, being a voice for the community. Fannie Lou Hamer, a lot of that. So this thing goes back.
This thing
goes back.
It's deep. I didn't put Marcus and W.E.B. Du Bois in there. I decided to talk about Nanny Helen Burroughs, but there were so many ways I could go, and because I took up so much space in the singleness.
I wrote about that one, so don't worry about it. I had that one.
Oh, great. Okay. Cool. Because we did come. You know what it was. We also covered Marcus Garvey and Du Bois in our in our colorism episode on the show.
Yes,
too.
yes.
So that's why I was like, well, let me take it to another historical figure.
Yeah, I love that, because the more you expose people to, the more they can learn and the more context they have. But I think some people probably didn't realize about the college policies. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. So I put in there. So I don't know. For me, this is just the way my brain works. Is that it's important, and I guess for me as a public theologian, my job is to interact with different disciplines. So from sociology to history to politics and so civics, right? Or what we used to call civics. I don't know what they call it no more.
I know, right?
I think we might need a new name, but because I don't know what's going on. But and then also my own personal experience to make these subject matters that are very hard, very dense, really difficult to enter, to make them accessible. And so I do have some additional historical pieces in there about the ways that colorism manifests and showed up at HBCUs. At churches, at black churches, where there were brown paper bag tests and comb tests for black people to enter in. These are black people. For dark skinned people, whether they can either make the cut, the light skin cut, to actually be entered, to gain entry into the actual church, y'all, to worship. Worship. Okay, this shows you just how evil,
pervasive it is. Oh my goodness,
it's painful.
It's like self-hate. It's like self-hate. Internalized racism. My goodness.
That's right.
And it's worse.
That's right. And HBCUs were in the past,
Howard,
very much known for this. For again setting up a caste system. Really, that's what it is. Yeah. And so, what does it mean to be a dark-skinned black woman? Trying to crawl your way out of a caste system, and you can't find any answers in the church, right? You know what I mean? As a little girl growing up, 80s and 90s, I can't find any answers in the church. I can't seem to find any answers. Why is that? How come I can't find this very huge issue that I have been grappling with and wrestling with for the majority of my life? You know what I'm saying? For over half my life, I had deep self-loathing over my dark skin. So how do you deal with that? And what do you do? And what are the consequences of that? And that's something that I talk about, dangerous consequences that I talked about with regard to that self-hate. I talk about in the book as well. And so it required a lot of vulnerability.
I know,
as well as knowledge, but
I know. And I mean, do you feel like, after you write, I know sometimes, people come up to me and they'll say, thank you for being so vulnerable. And I'm just thinking some of that vulnerability is not necessarily for people, but it's also for yourself, because it's like a healing. Was it a sense of healing for you? And writing, getting those words out, expressing some of those deep, dark thoughts that needed to be said that can help other people, but the vulnerability was more or less for you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I kind of, in some ways it's kind of two-pronged. I wrote with regard to these chapters, but particularly with colorism, I wrote the chapters, and in this case, the chapter that I needed, that 15-year-old Ekemini needed. You know what I mean? That 15-year-old, 14-year-old Ekemini who hated herself, I needed. You know what I mean? I wrote the resource that I didn't have. I did not have. There was nowhere I could go. I was like, there's not something. Even when I was researching, I said, okay, let me see what black women, biblical scholars that have done some work on this. Let me see where, I was like, I'm not finding stuff. I was like, wow, I got to really actually create something.
Yeah, because we still processing. We're still processing. And we're still living it and processing. Right.
And it's shameful, right? It's shameful. It's not something that you want to come out and talk about. It's not something, it's really something that we're very ashamed of, that we know happens and is still a reality, but there's a lot of shame. And there's a lot of pain. And there's a lot of trauma. And so that vulnerability was one, yes, I wrote what I needed. I wrote toward my healing. To heal my inner child and to see even my own growth. Wow, I've really come a long way.
Wow.
On this. But also I wrote for the sisters at the table. you know, who I know are grappling with this. I know because this is $1 million skin lightening, you know, that whole industry, that's $1 million industry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's in America and around the globe. So I was like, nah, I'm not the only one that had this issue. Yeah. Like, you know, so that was important for me to write to them. But then I would say, even tangentially, I would also say to the Black men. Right, and the ways that colorism maps onto Black men, and so our brothers in the standing room section, you know, I was like, let me write this too. Yes, I'm writing from the advantage point of a Black woman, right? So I'm talking about how colorism specifically maps onto dark-skinned Black women. Yes, you know, but there's still something to be learned, something to be gleaned. There is something that you can still resonate with. I think most Black folks, we all, wherever you are on the color spectrum, everybody can relate to colorism to some degree. If you witness somebody else that had it, or you've had your own experience, somebody has something to say about color. Somebody has something to say. 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 Somebody has something to say.
If you've been enjoying and learning from the Be the Bridge podcast, we invite you to join us in this work. You can support and sustain our mission as a recurring partner at bethebridge.com/give. You can also help spread this word of bridge building by supporting and really sporting our apparel. So if you haven't gotten your Be the Bridge hat, sweatshirt, all of the things, let's take the message to the street. Visit our online store at shop.bethebridge.com and make sure we're spreading the word about all the work that Be the Bridge is doing and will do. At Be the Bridge, we're doing the work to empower people and culture toward racial healing, racial equity, and racial reconciliation. And this work is only possible because of the generosity of bridge builders like you. So thank you so much for those of you who are listening and sharing our podcast, sharing our posts, those of you who are giving to this work that's helping us create resources and material that will transform hearts. So join us at bethebridge.com/give, and let's continue to build bridges together. Thank you so much.
Colorism, to some degree, if you witness somebody else that had it, or you've had your own experience, somebody has something to say about colorism.
Yeah. And it looks different for men, for dark-skinned men than dark-skinned women. So this is so good. And, you know, and I know like the vulnerability and your words, like, when you put it out there before God and before everyone, there's like a nakedness that you feel, you know, and, you know, and sometimes you'll forget, like, as the book goes on, you'll forget some of the things that you talked about and wrote about, and then someone bring it up, and you're going to be like, oh yeah, I did say that. Oops. Like, wait a minute. You know,
right.
But you know what? It's freeing. It's definitely liberating. And this is when we talk about liberation. Like, you know, this is a part of that. Now, you talked about decolonized discipleship. And I think it was like maybe it was like in 2020, it was a couple years ago, you tweeted something, and I'll never forget it.
I think
I'm going to tell you what you tweeted, girl. I'm going to tell you. I was taking receipts.
That is so funny.
You said, some of y'all out here talking about decolonizing your faith. Just make sure you don't just make sure you don't decolonize Jesus out of it, or something like that.
Oh yes. Some of y'all decolonizing your faith to the point that you decolonizing your way out the faith.
That's what you said.
I was like, what's happening?
And so I just remember that, and I was like, yes, because I think it's something to really look and examine, but not losing sight of Jesus and who Jesus is. And I think in the midst of the trauma and the pain, there are many that are losing sight of who, like, Jesus, you know what I'm saying? And so, but there is so much pain and hurt has been inflicted, you know, within, I don't want to just even say the white church, but also, you know, the brown church too, you know. Absolutely. There's been so much. I've experienced pain in both, you know, and probably more so in the brown church for me personally, my story. But yeah, talk a little bit about this, this part of life that you wrote, and we're gonna make it to the other ones. We're gonna hit it, but we needed to cover that colorism, because I have the dark black girl privilege in hosting this because I'm a dark black girl. I want to focus on that a little bit more,
Of course, because it's real, Tasha.
Yeah, it's real.
I'm sure you have your stories. I'm sure you have your trauma. I'm sure you got your pain behind it. Even as a public figure. You know when you opportunities don't come your way, or when you've been passed up or discarded or dismissed or ignored because you're dark skinned. You know it. Yeah. There's a knowing. Yeah. But you know what I mean? And unless you are embodied as a dark skinned black woman, you don't know. Yep. But there's a knowing. So that was important. So I'm glad you did park there. With regard to decolonized discipleship, so that chapter, that chapter is an intervention, if you will.
I love that.
In some ways. To me, it was important. I felt like I wrote about, so there is a blog that I wrote entitled Decolonized Discipleship. I wrote that back in February 2018, I want to say. And that was really the roots, if you will, of this chapter. And so that was many years before the deconstruction, decolonized movement within the faith. And so I was just talking about let's hold on to the purity of the faith, the true faith that's been passed down to us by the apostles, our ancestors, our grandmamas. Let's hold on to that faith, y'all. You know what I mean?
Because it's very different. Yeah.
It's very different. Okay. And so I was making those distinctions and showing, nah, this ain't it, but this is the true faith, and this is how we know because the word says X, Y, Z. And so, and this is what the gospel is. So very much that was what that was. Then, fast forward many, many years later, we are in the midst of the deconstruction and decolonization, movement, which I argue in this chapter, what preceded that or what precipitated that was the election of Donald Trump. And that is when people had very significant racial trauma because they realized, wait a minute, the people I worship with, the people that are my neighbors, the people that are my brothers and sisters and siblings in Christ voted against my interests and voted against my livelihood. And they still claim that we ought to work and worship together. Wait. People had a hard time with that, right? And then not only just that.
And still having a hard time.
People are still reeling. Still reeling till this day, right?
I don't think the church will realize the damage that has happened over the last few years. And if they're really taking account, I mean, because I was just interviewing some black people the other day just about, I had a friend group and mostly all of them were in predominantly white churches at the time. And now only one of those friends, and I'm talking about 15 friends on a text stream, and probably one of them remain in a church because that church is really doing something. They're really trying. But all of those people, and I was, and most of those people have been in those churches for 8. Now, these are not people that were just there a year. They were involved. They have been there for 8 years to 10 years.
Wow.
Everyone that I spoke with, and when they left, most of them left officially during the pandemic when everything was shut down.
That's right.
They just made their exit during that time. I mean, out of 6 people, that's when they made their exit. So I don't think I think there's going to still be stories to be told about this, but I think this is important when you say an intervention.
Yes.
And just, of people need space.
Yes.
We have to deal with trauma. Sometimes we don't have the resources to deal with trauma. So we kind of latch on to some things.
That's right.
That's right. And so what are you, in here, you're talking about, like a lot of the damage and when people leave and now what? Now
Yeah. So for me in this chapter, it was really, really important because there has been this pendulum swing or this reactionary response to the movement of deconstruction or decolonization.
Right.
I don't see them as the exact same project, which I talk about, in the book too. But
right.
Where people are not taking serious people's valid issues and valid hurts and valid pain, and the valid hypocrisy that they see. And so I really do try to legitimize that and validate, like, no, you're seeing this right. No, you're right. Sexual abuse is evil. It is wicked. NDAs should not be among the body of Christ. All of these things are wrong. Racism is wrong. That is spiritual abuse. Like, I'm like naming, like, no, all these things are wrong. You're right that they're wrong.
Right.
But my argument in that chapter is that it is not the Christian faith that needs construction or decolonization. That is not colonized. You know what I'm saying? It is the sinful additives. It is our version of Christianity in this land, right? Depending on, what your congregation is, what your, denomination is, things like that. But that's my argument. I was like, it ain't the actual faith, the Eastern Christian faith. That's not the issue, right?
And describe the difference so that people, because I'm telling you, like, in America, it's hard to know the difference. I mean, there are people falling for the okie doke that have been to seminary, they got doctorates, and they have adopted a Jesus that,
come on now.
I know not who he is. I don't recognize that.
Come on.
And but as you familiarize yourself with the words of Jesus, like you say, and understand Eastern culture, understand what was written. When you, really looking, and it's like we almost need new exegesis on scripture, to really help us. Bad. Yeah, because it's those bad, like, hermeneutics and exegesis that has been done over centuries. It flows into also the Black church, the Asian church, the the Latin church, like all of these spaces, and it's like almost you almost have to go back and restudy.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that skill set, you don't know, you don't know, and so, because sometimes when you look at it, but I always tell people, read the red letters. Just spend a year in the red letters, and God will open up your eyes.
What I say, I always, but you know what, and that's the thing. I think that because we're so westernized and because we are sadly influenced and products of the Enlightenment, aka the Enlightenment, we have a very individualistic approach to the faith. In the ancient Near East and in biblical times, if you will, in Jesus' day, people didn't have no Bibles. They didn't have their own Bible, personal Bibles. You know what I'm saying? I believe the Bible is the Word of God, step one. Let me make that very clear. I'm just saying, it had to be read in community.
Yeah, they had letters. These are
letters, y'all. They had to be inspired by the Holy Spirit, written through the apostles. But it had to be read aloud in community. Yeah, and so that's something that I also argue about. Like, these things should not be. It can't just be. It's just me and Jesus over here deconstructing and reconstructing. Because you do things by your own image, right? And because we are sinful, we have proclivities to making people and things in our own image. We will do that. You know what I'm saying? If we don't have oversight and accountability and communal insight, you know what I mean? Even when I talk about political education, the importance of political education, that has to be done in community.
Yeah.
So we can sharpen one another, so we can grow from one another, right? So you can, okay, you read that, good. Okay, take this book now. Go read that and come back, and then we're gonna have a discussion about these things. And so I talk about how we gotta link arms with elders who have been in the faith much longer than us, who have seen more grievous iterations of white supremacy than us. Although things are getting real thick these days, I just don't even know. It's just anyway. But but really, like they have been through so much. These are people that survived Jim Crow, and how are they overcome? And how are they still holding on to the faith? So that to me was really important, to be like, nah, let's try to get back, you know what I'm saying, to the fundamentals of the faith, and remember that Jesus right now is embodied as a brown-skinned Palestinian Jewish man. He's interceding for us right now. That matters. That matters a great deal. That's not a game. So, and I think I'm coming for iconography. I'm coming for misogyny too. Because everything ain't white supremacy. I'm coming for white supremacy for sure. And I'm talking about how colonized discipleship also shows up, not only just in white spaces. That's low-hanging fruit. I talk about how it shows up in white evangelical spaces, white progressive spaces, but also in black churches. Like how does it show up? And what do we do about that?
Yes.
That was important.
Because it's showing up in all those spaces. It's not showing up just on the conservative side. It's in the liberal side. It's like all in all of it, and people not knowing how to recognize it. So because you break down what is colonization, and then you break down colonized discipleship.
That's right.
Within this, and this is so needed. And I just it's just I understand where people are, but we understanding the process of decolonization too, and you talk about that.
And it's a lifelong process.
It is because it's stuff that I catch myself like, where did that thought come from?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I thinking that? Why am I reading this like this? Or what? And so those things have helped. But I think one of the things, we can't be afraid to read. We can't be afraid to read. So I think this is a good start. So those of you who are listening to this and you're going through this, or you're leaving a space and you feel lost, I think this is a good start before you start doing some of that work. So we make sure that we're on the right track and making sure we're not decolonizing Jesus.
Yes, and let me say this. I think and for those maybe who can't read, you know what I'm saying, or have a hard time with reading, you can also get the Audible book. You can hear myself, Christina, and Michelle narrating this book. So you will feel like you're actually at the table. You'll feel like you're on the show because you'll have you do get to hear us read our chapters.
I love audiobooks.
You get to hear our banter. You hear us laughing and talking, and you'll get the jokes. You know what I'm saying? There's some jokes in there. Well, you might not get the if you're outside our group, you might not get the jokes, but that's all right. You ain't got to get everything. You know what I'm saying? But I would say that. But then also I would say I think what's so painful to me about the movement toward decolonization, destruction, or what precipitated it really, is that the racism and the white supremacy that led to it is, I'm an evangelist at heart. I'm like, y'all, we got to wave the bloodstained banner of Jesus, the Christ. Okay. But with that said, I do believe that, it's a stumbling block. It's a hypocrisy.
Sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. And it hurts my heart, to see that the stumbling blocks that have been put up with the gospel. I was just reading a passage earlier today, actually, on Getting the Word with Truth Table, where we read the Bible on a daily basis and pray, myself and Christina. And Jesus talks about woe to those, by which offense comes. Woe to those who put stumbling blocks. For little children, right? It's better for them to have a millstone hung around their neck and be thrown into the heart of the sea than to cause any one of these little children, right? You know what I mean? To put a barrier between any one of these children and me. And we are the little children. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we ain't grown in God's kingdom. We are not grown. We are children. Like, you know what I'm saying? And what does it mean for us, with our hypocrisy, with our abuses, to be putting millstones around the necks of God's children? What does that mean?
I tell you, I
was the consequences.
Oh my God,
they're grave.
I tell you, because I was just doing some writing on white nationalism a little bit, and then and just when you say whoa, like, and just going back to even the slave Bible, and I'm reading this, and these were so-called missionaries that created this. Like, this was a global thing that started in Britain, and I was like, my God, like,
That's right. It's deep.
like, oh my God, like, woe to you that, like, I mean, you edited the word. Like,
right.
I'm
That's
like,
right.
oh my gosh.
That's
and
right.
you think it's like, and the seeds of this is still here. Like,
right.
the curse of Ham, like you see this in commentaries and all that. And it's just like, Lord, almost forgive us. Like, but I can't say we know not what we do, because they know exactly what
They know exactly what they do.
Exactly.
My grandma still has the wallet-sized photo of white Jesus that was given to her by the missionaries.
In Nigeria.
Imperialistic. Yeah. So you want to talk about Christian imperialism?
Yeah.
That's also in that chapter. Oh yeah.
Oh my
Oh yeah, you got to deal with that.
Okay, y'all. You gotta read this chapter. Read this chapter. Now, we gotta jump on. Because we're gonna be on here forever.
Listen.
But you also wrote, hidden in plain sight. I just give us a little bit on why. Not just. I don't think. This chapter is not for single Black women. So if you're a married woman, please do not skip over this. The same way that we as a single female should not skip over the sections where Christina talks about marriage and everything. I just give us just a little taste of why everyone should read this this chapter.
So Hidden in Plain Sight, a single Black woman's manifesto. That one is a deeply personal chapter. It's a chapter where I'd say that there's a deep soul wound. Just the other day, actually, me and Christina were recording our episode about her marriage chapter. Actually, today's her 21st wedding anniversary.
Well, happy anniversary, Christina!
And so we were talking about that, and she was just talking about how, how obviously, chattel slavery, since our people were torn from the shores of West Africa and Nigeria and Ghana, the Black family has been torn apart and asunder from that moment. Not even just starting here.
It's never been whole. Yeah.
From there, right? Torn asunder. Mother, father, kids, little babies suckling at the breast of their mom. Ripped away, torn away, and carried off and carted off. And so, and she's like, and it was, we were just in conversation and just talking about how even till this day and after emancipation, the first thing that enslaved or free Black people did was to put out ads, in the paper to find their spouses, find their loved ones, and that even now in 2022, it's like, I guess you could say in this manifesto, it's like, where is my husband? Where, and vice versa, where is my wife? Ooh, sorry, I'm getting emotional, but it is, it was important to write this chapter because there is a serious evil afoot. There is a grave injustice afoot. This is a systemic issue. This is not pathological. It's not that Black people don't value marriage. It's not that Black women don't value marriage or even desire marriage. It is that there have been mechanisms of oppression that have been at work for hundreds and hundreds of years. And now we're seeing the full manifestation of that. And that's showing up with such statistics that 62 to about 70% of Black women that have never been married. And many of these women, not all, but many of these women desire to be married. I am in the number. I desire to be married to a Black man. And those options are very limited. They're just not available. And why is that? And that is because of mass incarceration, and which is an outworking of U.S. chattel slavery. And which is why I cite in this book, in this chapter, I cite Diane M. Stewart, her work, Black Woman, Black Love, and the War on African American Marriage. And she says that this is a civil rights issue. This is a fundamental civil rights issue that people should be organizing and galvanizing around and have not. You know, and so it was important for me to write this book, this chapter, and talk about not only the historic, systemic analysis, all of that is in the sociological analysis, that's all going to be in there, you know, but also my own personal experience as a Black woman who is a lifelong single, who has never been in a relationship. What does that mean? And what does that look like? You know, you check the boxes, right? Marriage is not an accomplishment. It's just a gracious gift from God. Some, you know, but it's not a blood promise either. Everybody ain't gonna get married, you know. And so, but what does that mean? You know, to be a Black woman who desires to be married to a Black man. But even if you're open to interracial dating, right? Black women are on the bottom of that totem pole within the dating pool. You know, so even if you're open, I have girlfriends that are open to interracial dating and they are still very, very much single because we are not the ones chosen, right? And which obviously because of white supremacist stereotypical tropes about Black women, right? That are pervasive through the media, through history, through print, right? Through Hollywood, so many different ways, you know, that we are, you know, objectified, if you will, where we are still long-standing singles. And what does that mean? You know, and how does that impact the Black community on the whole when we don't have, when we've lost a generation to mass incarceration. You know, what does it mean for the aunties? You know what I mean? That do not have children. You know, and I don't consider myself child-free. I consider myself childless. You know what I mean? Because I think child-free, there's an implicit agency is implicit in that. Well, no, my agency was stripped from me. I was not. I did not choose this. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I had the choice. I'd be married and have about 2 kids at this point. That you know, can that God still do that? Yeah, God can. I don't know if God will, but God can do that. But that was important for me. You know, to write about this. Very important.
Woo, child. I can't even. I'm gonna keep my comments to myself because we'll be here for another hour just on that alone. That's a lot. That's a heavy one. But I think it's something powerful about saying. Because there's a fear sometimes as a Black woman, you know, educated Black woman, you know, successful Black woman to say, you know, this is the desire that I have, like, you know, and a friend of mine, I have, you know how you have some of those friends where they make you say the things that you don't ever want to verbalize out loud, you know. I have one of those friends, you know, that does that to me, and I just feel like, God, I don't want to feel all these feelings, you know. And so because I'm a very like I'm an outgoing person, but I'm a very private person also. Of course, And, you know, she made me say that, you know, that I was worthy, you know, that I am worthy, you know, to be happy, to have desires, to be desired, like all of those things. And I, you know, and I was like, girl, you know, but it was good for me to verbalize that. So I think this chapter can do that because you see the struggle of so many, you know, Black women, you know, out there, you know, but we, you know, even in the midst of that, you know, we out here killing it, you know, we not sitting on standby, you know. Oh, no. Listen, we're gonna make it do what it do. That's right. You know, we're gonna make it do what it do. But I tell you, you know, and then in your final portion of this, you know, the diaspora of dreams, I've heard you talk about that, you know, blackness is the image of God, and you know, and as you close, I mean, and this is stuff that as people, if you're a listener to Truth's Table, is basically Truth's Table come alive in print. That's right. And so these are things, because you only could do so much on a 45-hour podcast. But you're able to give more content research and all of that in the book, and I think this is just going to be the beginning of other things that are to come, because it's so needed. The conversations are so needed. So how, like, in this chapter that you had, what are some of the takeaways that you want Black women to get from that? And just because, then this is the thing, in this Christian space, just because this book is written by Black women, it doesn't mean. Do you know how many books that I read that I know that I'm not the intended audience, but there's something that I can gain from it? Yes. Men, and I know I have even a lot of white men that listen to my podcast. Get this book. Get this book. I mean, I'm surprised, like young white men that are actually that listen to this podcast. So I'm challenging you to get this book, to read it, and then buy a copy for somebody else. And so because there's something that you can learn. It will make you a better person. The more we know, the more diverse our understandings of the world that we live in us. It makes us better. It makes us better Christians. That's right. Because if we're talking about we're connected, and this is the kingdom of God, this is the family of God, we too are part of the kingdom of God and the family of God. That's right. And so it's important that we understand who's in our family. Yeah. And so, so anyway, what are some takeaways that you would want people to get from this? Yeah. So, I think, well, first and foremost, first of all, thank you for that. And you're right. Yeah. How many books, how many shows do we watch that we are not the intended audience? Exactly. They are not talking to us. Okay. Right. So that's what it means to be Black in America, for goodness sakes. Okay. So walk down our street for a bit, and learn, from us. So thank you for that. I would say, with this chapter in particular, but even with the book overall, I think one aspect of the book that's really great is that because we say it, these are our musings. At the back of the book, we have blank pages that say "My Musings," where our audience, our readers, can muse along with us. Yeah. Because we know the subjects that we're talking about, from colorism to protest and spiritual practice, decolonized discipleship, forgiveness, marriage, divorce. Oh my goodness, liberation in multi-ethnic worship. Diaspora Dreams, people are going to have a lot to muse about. It's going to spark some thoughts. And so we want to invite you to, of course, write your musings, on there. And so I think so the book will be very personal for you. And so you will actually have to buy another copy for somebody else, unless you want them to read your musings. I mean, so you will need you got to get another copy. You will need to get another copy, because you want to keep your musings to yourself, I would imagine. And then you can give something away. And I think because of the topics that we're talking about in the book, because we hit on life, love, and liberation, there's something in there for everybody. And so you'll read something, you'll be like, oh my gosh, so-and-so needs to read this book. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because we were just talking to her about her divorce, and this is like something that she could relate to. With regard to Diaspora Dreams, I thought it was important to talk about the blackness as the image of God. In light of white supremacist Christianity, in light of white nationalism, in light of the ways that our people have been maligned globally. Because white supremacy is a global project and has been thoroughly effective. It was important. And we know that one of the primary vectors of white supremacy was the corrupted Christianity in the hands of imperialist colonizers and missionaries, right? And so we are called to evangelism, so don't hear me not saying that, but I'm just saying the ways that the faith has been, corrupted Christianity has been proliferated. It was important for me. You mentioned earlier, Tasha, the curse of Ham. And so I go into that in this chapter. I talk about what it means, to be a Black person in the image of God, and how we are in the image of God in both body and soul, and how that connects to Jesus right now, who is presently embodied. Jesus did not raise as a ghost. Okay? If you believe that, you're a Gnostic.
Okay, you need to believe that this is a bodily resurrection. That's a fundamental of the Christian faith, y'all. Right up there with the Trinity. We got to believe these things. So I'm really just going back to the fundamentals of the faith. Like, these are the faiths, and then I connect it. And so in some ways, I make some connections to just, and I talk about that myth about what it means to be. Well, I'm black before I'm Christian, and why do we say that? Where do we get that from? And so I go into that, and then of course I make a connection between the foremost CRT scholar, Derek Bell, his work in Faces at the Bottom of the Well, talking about Afro-Atlantica, this black utopian paradise, that he talks about, that so many of us yearn for. Right? Especially on the heels of the Buffalo massacre, white supremacist massacre, that killed 10 black people, and just all of the black racism and police brutality, right? It's always like, where can we go? Where can we go to where we can just be and breathe and have joy and be free to be who we are without worries or concerns, you know what I mean? For our livelihood and for the livelihood of our other kin, and kinsmen according to the flesh. And so I talk about that and wrestle, with that and that longing that I feel like every black person has, to like, where can we be? That's why we have Wakandas and Zamundas, right? Because we're like, and that's why Black Panther was so huge for us, because it was like, oh my goodness, like it was our little black bubble for just 2 seconds, 2 hours, or however long that movie was. We got dressed up and it was like, oh my gosh, that camaraderie, that unity, that beauty, it's so rare that we get to have that experience, but we're always longing, for these fictional places, right? It's like, because we can't even name an African country, right? Because we know the ways that colonialism and imperialism has also wreaked havoc in our own homelands. So we can't even, we got to make up fictional places. That's why Zamunda and Wakanda exist. It's like, well, why didn't they pick Ghana? Like, why didn't they pick Nigeria? Like, you know what I'm saying? Do you want to go? You know the history there? Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like you think about those things. And so I kind of bring all of that together to bear in this chapter. And that's the concluding chapter. So I start the book and I conclude the book. Yeah. No pressure. No. But
Wow. I mean, just all of what you said, in light of what's happening and, in Buffalo, where can we be?
Where can we be?
The power of that, like when you said that, it was just, that's how I felt Saturday. And I still haven't fully even had an opportunity to process because of deadlines and because of everything. Same. But it's like, I think I feel like I'm still processing.
I know.
2012, you know what I'm saying?
Listen.
And this is gonna take time to process, but to see this happen again in such a short period of time, and to see, I think someone said the name's Pearly, and all these names are very familiar to us, and to hear this 86-year-old woman that has lived through Jim Crow and survived.
It was Pearly that did it in for me.
Yeah. And to have to look at the face of evil in her last breath, like that right there, I can't shake it. So, the world moves on, but it's like we don't move on like that. It'll be out the news cycle, it'll move on. And then when you see the language that is still out there and platform that is still promoting that ideology that he's caught up in high places, in government places, people in Congress, people in Senate, people on TV,
famous theologians,
spewing this same
normalizing
mess.
slavery.
Yes,
on Twitter.
Yes, I haven't. It's just like you say. Oh, gee, I used to, when people used to say, and I almost feel like weepy too, it's like when people used to say, come Lord Jesus, like,
Yeah.
you know, and it's like, I used to, like, why do you want to die? Like, you know, like, but when you say, where can we be? Like, it's not safe. And then you have your brothers and sisters in Christ that are not concerned about your safety. Yeah. Like they're more concerned about the bottom line.
That's right.
And it's like, I mean, was the early church, was it concerned about the bottom line, or was it concerned about the people that represented the community?
That's right.
And I was just like, we have ingested something. I do not understand what we have become. And it's like, where can we be? Where can we be? Where can we be?
That's right.
And and you know, and I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful for this book. I think this book comes as like a healing balm in the midst of a lot of turmoil where we just need a place to be. And I think this book, these words, are a place to be because it gives us hope.
Yes.
Not so much in hope in ourselves, but hope in the God that we serve. That's and so I'm so grateful. What are the things that you know, I know there's a lot that we're lamenting right now. What are some things that are like bringing you joy in this moment?
Well, you know? That's a great question. Oh boy,
I know, right?
Oh, it feels like a hard question now. I know. It's
It's like a hard week to ask that question.
It is.
It's a hard week to ask that question.
You know, I have. I don't know. Yeah, I'm great. Well, you know, I am grateful that the season's changing. Yes. We are on the cusp of summer. Yes. Summer is my favorite season.
Okay. Okay.
I'm really, really excited about that. Yes. I know that every season is changing now because climate change. I am aware, but summer is still my favorite season.
Okay.
I'm grateful for that. So I'm looking forward to kind of, you know, soaking in the sun. Okay. You know, taking a little bit more of that. I am looking forward to a vacation. I'm looking forward to that.
Say it again.
I'm taking a vacation. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes.
You know, and of course, what's giving me joy, my nieces, of course. Oh. My niecey poos. Yes. They give me a lot of joy in this tumultuous time that we are living in, chaotic time that we are living in. I would say those, at least at the moment, and I'm grateful to be on the cusp of my birthday, 40th birthday. Can't believe it. I was like, wait, what? Oh,
when is the date?
Well, I don't want to give out the governments, but it is coming up this month. So I'll tell you offline.
Okay, cool. Okay.
But it's coming.
Okay.
So I have a lot. Yeah, I'm grateful.
Mine is coming too. That's why mine is next month.
Oh, yours is next month? Okay.
Yeah, we all need a vacation. Let me tell you, ladies, if you know, we all need a break, even if it's just a weekend break. We have to take some time to breathe. Yes. Like, I've been looking forward to a vacation since my last vacation. And I do need to, like, normally we put in a little more space for me, but this year has just been very different because when you're in a writing season, you don't have those breaks. But because of what we write, the heaviness of what we write and what we carry, I know I have to become more creative and talking with those who are my, you know, agents and publishers, like this is different. We're writing something different. That's so right. we gotta have some different rules.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree. Yeah, you're right.
Because if not, we'll tap out. And I don't think I've ever been as exhausted as I am in my life. Like, you know, it's just, and I think coming out of the pandemic and everything, you know, so I'm so glad that your nieces are, bringing you joy. You know, I got a little dog, you know, and everything, and that has been so helpful over the last year for me. Family, you know, all of that, the little cousins, the godchildren, all those good things, but because there is so much to lament, but thank God for laments. Thank God that we have a place to direct our pain. That, you know, that gives us hope.
That's right.
and it's a form of worship. So I know that this book is gonna just really help people, and I look for more to come. And so I know Christina and Michelle have their portions.
Yes.
I'm like, at some point as the year goes, I need to get them on here to talk about their portions too. Like, give some special Black girl privilege here.
Thank you, Tasha.
But I'm so grateful for you. Keep up the beautiful work. Okay?
I pray thank you for having me, and I do pray that our book is a blessing to your community, to your listeners. Of course, you can get the book, wherever books are sold. You can walk into
and we'll have all of that in we'll have all of that in the show notes.
Yes.
But I would encourage you to get the Audible too. But I like to get the book and the Audible. I know that's like for some people's budget, but I like to have the book, and then I like to listen to the Audible because I like to hear voices.
Yeah.
But then I like to be able to go back to a chapter.
Okay. Mark it up, maybe.
And mark, and like that. So I do. So most people get they get it from me twice.
I love it.
But the great thing is about being in this position with the podcast and everything. Most of the time, I get the book sent to me.
Yeah, you do, exactly.
And then I go buy the Audible.
That's right.
So I have the Audibles just about to every book, and I like to listen as I go and around the day, and all that. So
I hope it blesses you on the Audible. You'll hear our cackles. You'll hear our hear our jokes. I think you'll like the jokes.
Okay. I like a good joke now.
Oh, the jokes are in there, and the cultural references, girl. You will. Yeah.
I love it. it. Well, thank you guys for listening. And, as Ekemini said, this book can be found where all books are sold, downloaded, buy the ebook, the book, the Audible, all of that. And then also listen to their podcast. I think there's a lot to learn there. And I'm so grateful for you and your voice, and looking forward to all this to come. This is the thing. I guess this would say this is bringing me joy. This has brought me joy today. So
right. This too, especially after a hard week. I was looking forward to this conversation.
I know. That's what. Listen, let me tell you guys. I have we're on this platform, and we had some issues, so we took the video feed off, and so we hadn't put it back on. And then when I got on here with Ekemini, I was like, wait a minute, I need to see her face today. Exactly. I need to see her face, and we had to hook it up where we could see each other's face. So we're right here in virtual presence.
That's right.
But so grateful for you, and so thank you guys for listening to the Be the Bridge podcast, and I hope this podcast is a blessing to you.
Go to the donors table if you'd like to hear the unedited version of this podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Be the Bridge podcast. To find out more about the Be the Bridge organization and or to become a bridge builder in your community, go to bethebridge.com. Again, that's bethebridge.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, remember to rate and review it on this platform and share it with as many people as you possibly can. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Today's show was edited, recorded, and produced by Trayvon Potts at Integrated Entertainment Studios in Metro Atlanta, Georgia. The host and executive producer is Latasha Morrison. Lauren C. Brown is the senior producer.
And transcribed by Sarah Conitzer.
Please join us next time. This has been a Be the Bridge production.